Stay away from that trapdoor, because there's something down there. My name's Anthony Robin, you can call me Tony, and if you're of a certain age, then you'll remember a TV show from the 1980s, a short claymation show called The Trapdoor. Each episode only ran for a couple of minutes, but they crammed each episode with new monsters and assorted slimy things. The Trapdoor follows the adventures of Burke and friends who live in a castle where nobody goes. Above them is the thing upstairs, and below them are the horrors of the trapdoor. In fact, this setup is shown at the beginning of every episode.
Somewhere in the dark and nasty regions where nobody goes stands an ancient castle. Deep within this dank and uninviting place lives Burke.
Hello.
Overworked servant of the thing upstairs.
Burke, feed me.
But that's nothing compared to the horrors that lurk beneath the trapdoor.
After the introduction, the beginning of the theme song would play. The rest of the theme song would play over the ending credits of the show. I dare not play the theme song on YouTube, but if you're an 80s or 90s kid, the theme song is seared into your brain. Burke lives in the cellar with Boney and Drutt. He is overworked. Not only does he cook for the thing upstairs, but he's constantly repairing the castle and sometimes even has to bathe the thing upstairs. Burke complains about his job, but he clearly enjoys cooking with the worms, eyeballs, squirmy things and other gross ingredients that can be found in the castle. Boney is a skull who lives in his own little alcove by the trapdoor. He's more pessimistic than Burke. He often tells him that things are a bad idea, and often he's right. Drutt is a small spider-like creature who can often be seen racing around in the background, eating worms and other creepy crawlies that live in the cellar. In almost every episode, a monster would come up from the trapdoor. Despite the warning in the show's introduction, Burke would often open the trapdoor, or even leave it open. But leaving the trapdoor closed was no guarantee that the monsters wouldn't make their way into the cellar anyway. Burke and the gang would have to deal with the invading monster, or sometimes monsters. Sometimes a good bonking would send them on their way. Other times, Burke would have to run from them until they came up with a better idea for sending the monsters back down the trapdoor where they belonged. Every episode brought fresh ideas and new monsters, and at less than 5 minutes an episode, none of the ideas ever overstayed their welcome. We did have some recurring creatures, most notably Rog. Rog was a strong, though not very bright monster, and one of the only friendly creatures to come up from the trapdoor. The thing upstairs owns the castle, or I assume he does. It's never outright stated, and he may just be squatting there. He keeps Burke busy with a constant stream of demands. Mostly, feed me, Burke. Feed me. We never actually see the thing upstairs. We just hear its voice calling down. We get tantalising descriptions from Burke talking about his many lumps and bumps and humps, and even several nostrils. Whatever the thing upstairs is, it seems satisfied with the disgusting meals and sometimes live monsters that Burke sends up for it to eat. The cellar where Burke lives contains Burke's kitchen, a dumbwaiter for sending food to the thing upstairs, Burke's cupboard where he keeps his ingredients and occasionally other items that you may need for an episode. There's a set of steps leading to the thing upstairs room, or rooms, and corridors come off from the cellar that lead to various different storage rooms or other rooms that may be needed for an episode. What was most intriguing for kids watching at home though, was what was down the trapdoor. Well, very occasionally we did see down the trapdoor, a dark and shadowy place with many monsters lurking in all the corners. These episodes were a real treat, especially back when the only way to see it was to catch the episode live. Speaking of which, the trapdoor did have several VHS releases, and all the episodes are now available on DVD, and also several different streaming platforms including Amazon Prime. This means a whole new generation can be introduced to the monsters from the trapdoor. Trapdoor was originally shown on ITV in the 1980s and again on Channel 4 in the early 90s. This meant that plenty of kids got to experience the various monsters that would invade their screens from under the trapdoor. The show ran for 2 seasons and 40 episodes. Kid-friendly horror was all the rage at the time. Duckula would come out next year, and soon Nightmare would be sending scores of schoolchildren into its own dungeons to meet their grisly deaths. Trapdoor celebrates kids' interest in disgusting things and scary monsters the same way that Raymond Briggs' Fungus the Bogeyman and Jan Pasquale's The Haunted House had done in the 1970s. 2 Trapdoor video games were released for the ZX Spectrum and other home computers. I even have a copy. I'm not sure why, because I've never had a machine that could play this. They also released a Trapdoor board game called Burke's Trapdoor board game. The show was made by CMBT Animation, a 2-man team working in Bristol. These 2 men were Charlie Mills and Terry Brain. The pair met in school where they made their first amateur animations. A BBC documentary described the meeting as a guy who could draw meeting a guy who could build things. The pair were inspired by the Tony Hart Show and Aardman Animation, who were based only a few miles away. During the production of The Trapdoor, they were joined by Steve Box, an aspiring animator. Since CMBT did not have any money to pay him at the time, Steve applied for a government youth training programme. This meant he was paid £20 a week by the British taxpayer while he was working on The Trapdoor. Best use of government money ever. The show was animated a frame at a time, moving plasticine models across the set of the castle cellar. By today's standards, with computer-aided, video-assisted, wire armature models and hundreds of expressive heads, Trapdoor's plasticine models may seem crude as they wobble across the set, but it has a wonderful organic feel that works really well with the monstrous, creepy-crawly world that CMBT was bringing to life. The eyes in the credits were animated by Nigel Davis, who has gone on to have many animation credits. He's done work for Aardman Animations, including writing and directing a short called Blind Date. He has also directed episodes of 2019's Moonmin Valley. The theme song was written by Bob Hartley, who would go on to write #1 hits for Shakin' Stevens and would later compose music for other children's television. The song was performed by Zygot. This is the only song that I can find credited to him, but I assume that this is the guy on the album cover. What an absolute legend! And yes, a 7-inch single of the extended theme song was released. The show was voiced by Willie Rushton, who has acted in many films and TV shows, including those made for children and those definitely not made for children. He was also a comic writer and satirist. He was a regular on BBC4's I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, and was also a founder and cartoonist for Private Eye magazine. His performance as Burke was wonderfully warm and brings the character to life, feeling like a friendly West Country uncle, while Boney is performed very much as a theatrical type, and to me sounds kind of like Kenneth Williams crossed with Victor Meldrew. Due to the way that CMBT animated the mouths of the figures, Willie Rushton was able to add his own lines. This got him a writing credit on the show. Mills and Brain said Rushton's reactions and improvisations when watching the animation for the first time would have them in stitches. CMBT would go on to make Stop It and Tidy Up, an equally well loved, though not as well remembered show. They also made Bump the Elephant. There were plans for a feature film called The Pudding, but unfortunately that never got made. It seems CMBT were never able to get enough work to keep the studio going. Steve Box, and then later Terry Brain, would go to work for the much larger Aardman Animation Studio a few miles down the road. No one seems to be angry about this, it's just one of those things. Terry Brain would work on Wallace and Gromit, as well as other projects for Aardman Animation. Before his death, he was working on a series called Weirdly Rhymes, which can be found online. Charlie Mills is also reported to be working for Aardman Animation, but I can't find credits for him anywhere. Steve Box also worked on many projects for Aardman Animation, and under them he made an animation called Stage Fright. This is an interesting animation about actors during the change from live stage performances to early silent films. So, 40 episodes, 4 to 5 minutes each? Let's have a closer look. Spoilers, by the way, but you have seen this show, haven't you? If not, go and watch it and then come back. By the way, if you are enjoying what you've seen so far, give us a like. It's YouTube. Season 1, Episode 1, Breakfast Time. Burke has to make breakfast for the thing upstairs. While he's cooking, the thing upstairs reminds Burke not to open the trapdoor. Burke immediately opens the trapdoor. A few worms come out, followed by a yellow monster, which eats the thing upstairs' breakfast. Oh no! But then, a second, large red monster comes out and chases Burke. Burke runs away down the corridor and goes into a room with a mirror. Luckily, the red monster is scared of its own reflection and runs back down the trapdoor. The thing upstairs is shouting for its breakfast, so Burke just feeds him the yellow monster with the thing upstairs breakfast still inside it. This is a great first episode. It has all the main characters and sets up a classic trapdoor situation. It does potentially imply that Burke is new to his role at this point, as he hasn't fiddled with the trapdoor before and is curious about it. Episode 2, Sliver, Wriggle and Writhe. Burke is trying to put up some shelves and presses Boney into helping. The wood breaks, so Burke decides that using some wood from the trapdoor would be a good idea. That's not a good idea, it's a terrible idea. An orange tentacle monster emerges from the trapdoor and starts throwing the cast around. Burke is dragged down the trapdoor and then thrown all the way up into the rafters. While he's hanging there, Burke thinks that the wood from the rafters would make good shelves. The monster is still attacking. It drags Burke down from the rafters and pulls the wood down with him. Burke has had enough and uses the wood from the rafters to bonk the tentacles into submission. Burke gets all the shelves up by the end of the episode, but when the thing upstairs cools down, they all collapse. Great episode, great lines from Burke. I loves a bit of bonking. Don't we all, Burke? Episode 3. Food for Frot. The thing upstairs asks Burke to check on his garden. Burke has been neglecting the garden and is surprised by how big all the plants have grown, especially Frot, who is the thing upstairs' favourite plant. As he's feeding Frot, Burke narrowly avoids getting nipped by the parrot/plant hybrid. Returning to the kitchen, Burke considers opening the trapdoor to get worms for lunch, because Burke never learns. But the trapdoor opens by itself and some stinging wasp-like creatures come out into the cellar. They attack Burke, but luckily Frot eats the stinging creatures. Burke rewards Frot by making him into a salad for the thing upstairs. Burke, that is not a nice way to say thank you. Anyway, great episode. Episode 4. Lurkings. Burke decides to go fishing and drags Boney along despite his protests. Burke opens the trapdoor to get worms for bait because Burke never learns. Burke leaves the trapdoor open, and as the guys settle down to fish, a large red monster comes out the trapdoor and begins to follow them. Burke and Boney are moaning at each other at the fishing ground, and the red monster watches them from afar. When the monster reveals itself, Burke is surprised and falls into the swamp. The monster is Rog. He's friendly and he likes fishing. This is the first showing of Rog. There's some cool background stuff, but the episode feels weirdly disjointed and even drags a bit, which is odd for a 3-minute episode. So this episode is just okay. Episode 5. Gourmet's Delight. Burke is under pressure to make the thing upstairs a gourmet meal. The kitchen is a mess, with worms and other ingredients spilt everywhere. Once the meal is made, the trapdoor opens and an invisible creature starts walking around, leaving footprints in the spilt food and making even more mess for Burke to clean up. A food fight begins, and Burke hits the creature with yellow food, making it visible. Once he catches the monster, Burke notices he has a small hole in the top of his head and blows him up like a balloon before letting him go. Cue a long deflating sound, and the monster drops back down the trapdoor. This is the first introduction of a monster who will later be known as Bubo. The footprints in the plaster scene are a great use of the materials that the animators were using, and this is a great episode. Episode 6. Creepy Crawly. While Burke is out of the cellar, the trapdoor opens and a big black spider comes out. Boney warns Burke when he comes back in. Burke, however, thinks Boney is seeing things. He checks the corridor anyway and finds a tiny spider. He thinks this is what Burke saw until he comes face to face with a huge spider, which is basically a very large Drut. Burke panics. He manages to get back into the cellar, but he's wrapped up in the spider's web. Drut comes to the rescue, unwrapping Burke and using the webbing to tie up the large spider. Burke is very grateful and pushes the big spider back down the trapdoor. Boney jumps when the tiny spider reappears in his alcove. "You're spineless," says Burke, which is a great pun, but the episode sadly follows this up with "Boney's a bonehead," which is not as good a pun to end on. Still, a great episode overall. Episode 7. The Big Thing. Boney is bored, and Burke is ignoring him while he does his cooking. Boney wishes something exciting would happen, and then the trapdoor opens. It's Rog! Rog's back. He grabs Boney and takes him up to the roof to get away from Burke. Burke decides he needs something to flatten his cooking. Even though he has a rolling pin right there on the desk, he wants to use Boney. Burke finds the trapdoor is open, and Drut squeaks at him, which Burke can apparently understand because he announces that Boney's been kidnapped. Rog has taken Boney up to the top of the castle, but Boney goes on and on and on, and Rog begins to fall asleep. As he falls asleep, he falls right off the top of the castle and lands on Burke. This is a great episode. It really gives Boney a chance to talk. It's just a shame no one's listening to him. Episode 8. Ghoulies. Burke is exploring an old storeroom and using Boney as a candle. He finds an old spellbook and, despite repeated warnings from Boney, casts a spell to summon ghoulies. The trapdoor starts banging around and really does a number on Drut. Then the spirits, or the ghoulies I guess, appear. I think the ghoulies are the only monsters which are drawn and not claymation. I believe they were animated by Nigel Davis, who did the Eyes in the Dark in the credits. Burke finds that Boney and Drut are being floated around the cellar by the ghoulies, so he runs back to get the spellbook. Boney tells Burke he has to read the spell backwards in order to dispel it. Burke does this, and the ghoulies disappear. This is an episode where Burke listens to Boney, and as a result, the day is saved. Great episode. Episode 9. The Dose. The thing upstairs has a code, so Burke is making it medicine. But a green monster comes out the trapdoor, changes shape a few times, it makes some disgusting noises, and Burke chases it round the cellar. But it drinks all the medicine. I assumed this creature had sealed its fate, and Burke would feed it to the thing upstairs, with the medicine still inside, like the yellow monster in the first episode. But instead, the green monster's mum shows up, and is a much larger monster. Luckily, the thing upstairs sneezes so loudly, he scares the two monsters away. Burke will have to make some more medicine, but he'll have to make several doses because he, Drut and Boney are now all sick. Great episode. Episode 10. The Thingy. Burke nails the trapdoor shut to stop the monsters coming out. This is a great idea. only immediately a monster bursts out. It looks a lot like one of the plants from the garden in episode 3. It seems to have magical powers. It forces Burke and the gang to change sizes and shapes. Burke even gets turned into a worm, and Drut looks like he's going to eat him. Then the monster leaves. He's just gone, but he's made a lot of Burks before he leaves. I don't like that the monster just decided to leave in this episode, but I do like that he made a lot of Burks before he left. So overall, great episode. Episode 11. Don't let the bed bugs bite. Burke's been cleaning up, but Drut makes a mess. Burke is tired and fed up, so he goes to bed. As Burke sleeps, a big hand comes out of the trapdoor and takes Boney. Burke wakes up as he hears Boney calling for help. Reluctantly, Burke jumps down the trapdoor after Boney, and we get to see what's down the trapdoor. How exciting! Monsters move on all sides of Burke. Some are familiar. We see the orange tentacles from episode 2, and I think this monster looks like a colour swap of the yellow monster from episode 1. Burke is terrorised on all sides, and moves deeper along the corridor, following Boney's calls. But then he wakes up. Yep, it was all a dream. Give Burke his due, he was ready to jump down the trapdoor after Boney when he woke up, before he realised it was a dream. This was our first look down the trapdoor, and I'm counting it, even though it was a dream. Great episode. Episode 12. Fester Rancid. I do wonder if the title of this episode is a play on the name Esther Ranson, who was a famous TV presenter at the time. A couple of years after this, she would fund Childline, and has been involved in many social and charitable causes since. There are no other references to her during the episode. The invisible monster from episode 5 is back, but he's still yellow from where Burke hit him with the food. He's now called Bubo. A bubo is a swollen lymph node in the groin or armpit. Gross. He is terrorising Drut and Boney. He takes Boney to the swamp, and Burke comes after them. Bubo plays the drums on Boney's head. He hides when Burke shows up. As Burke's talking with Boney, Bubo runs up and jabs Burke in the backside with a stick, launching Burke into the swamp where he is almost eaten by a monster. Burke grabs Bubo and throws him into the swamp, declaring that he won't get out of there and that will be the last we'll see of him. It will not be the last we see of him. A great episode and a great tune played on Boney's head. Episode 13. The Pain. The thing upstairs has a toothache, and Burke has to go and pull the rotten tooth. In the meantime, Drut wedges open the trapdoor in order to get worms to eat. Drut, you fool! Unfortunately, a very big pale worm monster comes out and wants to eat Drut. We follow Drut, avoiding the monster, as we hear Bert operating on the thing upstairs. Just as Drut is cornered, Burke clobbers the monster with the thing upstairs tooth. That tooth is huge! The thing upstairs must be massive. The episode closes as we learn Burke pulled the wrong tooth. A predictable, but still great ending. Great episode. Episode 14. The Little Thing. Burke is chasing a small orange honking monster that came out of the trapdoor. Burke threatens to nail the trapdoor shut, although he already did that in episode 10. Both Boney and the thing upstairs are asleep, and Burke is afraid that the annoying little honking monster will wake the thing upstairs. Unfortunately, the orange honking monster makes it upstairs into the thing upstairs bedroom. Look at this door. Once again, the thing upstairs must be huge. The door handle is twice the height of Burke. Burke quietly goes into the thing upstairs bedroom to try and get the honking monster out. And just for a few frames, we see part of the thing lit up by the lightning. We can't really make out a lot though. It's just a blobby part of a monster. Ultimately, the thing upstairs is woken up, and the episode ends with Burke being clobbered for waking up the thing upstairs. Poor Burke, but great episode. Episode 15. Don't open that trapdoor. Burke is cleaning out his cupboard, and he finds a radio. He turns the radio on, and it plays an extended version of the trapdoor theme tune. As the song plays, monsters pour out of the trapdoor, many that we have seen before, and some new ones that we will be seeing in future episodes. As the song ends, all the monsters leave. Rog says he liked the song, and Boney says he didn't. This was a fun episode, and it's great to see all the monsters in the cellar putting on a music video for us. Great episode. Episode 16. Junk food. Something tries to come up the trapdoor, but Burke stops it. The thing upstairs needs his rubbish emptying and sends it all down in the dumbwaiter. As the rubbish spills across the floor, Burke considers pushing it all down the trapdoor. Then Rog arrives. He's hungry and happy to eat the rubbish. Burke is pleased because this saves him a job, but then Rog accidentally travels up in the dumbwaiter. Burke is worried the thing upstairs will be angry, so runs up the stairs. Burke gets to the door of the thing upstairs just as Rog is being thrown out because the thing upstairs won't eat him as he's raw, even though he ate the monster from episode 1 raw. Angry that Rog upset the thing upstairs, Burke hits Rog. Rog doesn't like being hit, so he hits Burke back and knocks him out the window. Then Rog says that Burke is a good friend. I'm not sure if this episode is a bad message about conflict resolution, or a good message about not hitting other people, or if it just doesn't have a message at all because it's just a kids show. Overall, great episode. Episode 17. Yuck! Boney is sleeping, and an insectoid creature comes out the trapdoor and lays many eggs around the cellar before leaving. Burke comes back and finds the eggs. He wonders whether he should boil them or fry them, but then they start hatching. To Burke's delight, he watches the creatures go through their life cycle. Eggs, pods, crawly things. Burke declares he could watch them all day, but the creatures begin to pop, and when they pop, they leave a thick yellow substance all over the kitchen. Soon the kitchen is waist deep in yellow sludge. Burke opens the trapdoor to drain all the yellow sludge out. The episode ends as Boney wakes up and requests eggs for breakfast. This episode was basically a creature feature on this one particular monster. Personally, I think it was just okay. Episode 18, Flying What's It Thingy. Burke is trying to take a picture of Drut or Boney, even though they don't want their picture taken. That's not cool, Bert. Don't take pictures of people if they don't want their photo taken. A green flying bat comes out from the trapdoor, and Burke says these things make the creature upstairs come out in purple pimples he has to pop, so Burke tries to catch the bat. We see the orange honking monster from episode 14 come out of the cupboard, but it is unremarked upon. Burke trips on the camera as he's trying to get the green bat, and ends up taking a picture with all the characters in it. As they admire the photo, Boney asks what happened to the green bat. The thing upstairs calls down that the bat is in his room, and Burke gets ready to go and pop some purple pimples. Great episode. Episode 19, Strange Goings On. Burke and co are getting ready to go out, but the thing upstairs has an itch that Burke needs to scratch. As Burke leaves to go and scratch his master's itch, Boney is dragged into the trapdoor by the orange tentacles, first seen in episode 1. This is not a dream like in episode 11. Boney is dragged along by various creatures and falls a few times. He lands in the breathing tube, I guess it's a breathing tube, of a monster which launches him up into the air. He comes out in the swamp by the castle. So the trapdoor must lead down to some chambers and caverns that go under the castle and out into the surrounding area. Boney is dragged around the swamp by various creatures, including these little mushroom guys. He ends up in a nest. A giant bird picks him up and flies him over the castle, and it drops him. Boney lands back in his trolley just as Burke gets back from scratching the thing upstairs itch. Boney doesn't want to go out anymore, much to Burke's frustration. This is an episode where we saw inside the trapdoor, which instantly makes it a great episode. Episode 20, Midnight Snack. Burke and Boney are sleeping when 3 identical monsters, plus a little monster, come out of the trapdoor, all moving in unison. They make a mess of the kitchen and eat all the food. Then they pick up Burke and throw him against a wall. Burke is not happy about this. He sets an ambush for the monsters, and then makes them clean up their mess, which seems fair. We saw these monsters in episode 15, and I like the gimmick of them moving in unison. Great episode. Episode 21, Nasty Stuff. Burke is making some medicine for himself, and I love the gag of him cracking the eyeball like an egg. After drinking the medicine, he becomes a bigger, meaner version of himself, but turns back into normal Burke when he burps. This episode is inspired by Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Drut and Boney end up drinking the medicine too and also change, but they just chase each other around for a bit. It's a great idea for an episode, but they don't do a lot with it. This is just an okay episode. Episode 22, Sniff That. Burke is trying to unblock the castle drains. The smell is bad, and he's not making a lot of progress. He thinks he needs something to suck out the blockage. Also, he's left the trapdoor open again. Burke never learns. A many-eyed creature comes out the trapdoor and chases Burke. He sees Boney just as a brown sucky monster comes out the trapdoor and sucks Boney up. Burke saves Boney by hitting the monster with his rolling pin. Then the sucky monster sucks up the many-eyed monster, and that gives Burke an idea. He gets the sucky monster to clear the drain, which it seems to enjoy. A great episode. Convenient that the sucky monster was happy to become a drain unclogger. Episode 23, A Vile Pile. Burke is throwing rubbish down the trapdoor, even though Boney tells him not to. Burke then goes to make dinner when a monster made of rubbish comes up the trapdoor. It seems to have the sucker tube from the monster in the last episode, but instead of sucking, the rubbish monster is using it to fire goo at Burke and friends. Burke uses his pestle to block the spitting tube, and the monster begins to swell up until it bursts, leaving parts all over the cellar, including some of the yellow goo from episode 17. Burke says, "What a load of rubbish." Boom boom, episode over. Great episode, and I'm sure that Burke will never throw rubbish down the trapdoor again. Episode 24, Slightly Weird. Burke is outside the castle looking for mushrooms to feed to the thing upstairs, when the thing upstairs flies overhead on his way back to the castle. So we know the thing upstairs is huge and he can fly. We get a warning from Burke that some mushrooms can be poisonous. Then he tries to pick some mushrooms, but the mushroom gets up and runs away. Burke chases the mushroom and seems to follow the reverse of the journey that Boney took in episode 19. He comes through the caverns under the cellar and eventually back up through the trapdoor. On the way back to the trapdoor, we see the large spider from episode 6 and the big pale worm from episode 13. As he comes back up the trapdoor, Boney does not recognise Burke because he's covered in the swamp water. The mushroom Burke was following appears at the end, so hopefully the thing upstairs will get fed. This is an inside the trapdoor episode, therefore an instant great episode. Episode 25. Bye Bye Burke. Burke is tidying up the cellar and being harassed by demands from the thing upstairs. Suddenly, he comes face to face with the big red monster from episode 1. Looking around the cellar, nearly all the monsters from this season are back and making a real mess. This is because Burke left the trapdoor open again, because Burke never learns. Even Rog is back, but Burke has had enough. He's not staying here to clean up all this mess. He packs his bags and walks off into the sunset. Credits roll, end of season. But post-episode, Burke comes back. It was great to see lots of monsters interacting in the same room again. I'm not a big fan of fake outs, but it's not as if they pretended that anybody died, so I'll let them off. Overall, great episode. And that's the end of season 1. Season 2, episode 1, Scunge. The trapdoor opens and a large pink monster with big claws comes out. Burke arrives and greets the audience before bonking the monster with his rolling pin. This immediately re-establishes the core format of the trapdoor. Burke goes to do some cooking, but he leaves the trapdoor open because Burke never learns. Bubo comes back. He's not stuck in the swamp after all, and he starts causing trouble. Rog also comes back, and everyone gets into a big scunge fight. Scunge is apparently another word for scum. Ultimately, Rog knocks Bubo down the trapdoor. A strong start to the season. There's more detailed stuff going on in the background, and the monster designs are a little more ambitious. This is something we will see continuing throughout season 2. Overall, a great episode. And by the way, if you think I'm saying that a lot of these episodes are great episodes, it's because a lot of these episodes are great episodes. Episode 2. Oh globbits. The castle pipes have sprung a leak and Burke solved the problem by using a worm. Unfortunately, the worm does not stick around and the leak starts again when Burke leaves. Going back into the cellar, the trapdoor is open. We don't know if Burke left it open this time, so we won't blame him. Boney and Drut are hiding in the rafters. How did Boney get up there? Is Drut strong enough to carry him? They are being terrorised by a big, green, spongy monster that floats around. Burke tries bonking him, but it has very little effect, so instead, Burke chases him out of the castle. When Burke comes back to the castle, the flood is now waist high. Boney tells Burke he'll need a very big sponge to clean up all this water, so Burke goes back out to try and find the floaty, spongy monster again. I really appreciate the animation in this episode, especially animating all that pink water. Episode 3. Moany Boney. Boney is bored, so he plays I Spy with Burke, which is difficult because Burke can't spell. Although in episode 8, Ghoulies, he was able to read the spell book and even read it backwards. A gargoyle/imp monster comes out of the trapdoor. It casts a spell on Boney, giving him a horse body, and it turns Burke red, which the guys don't seem to mind. Burke particularly is very happy with his new body, but then he finds another Boney has taken over his hole, and now Burke has grown too large and can't get back into the cellar. And then Boney wakes up. Yes, it was all a dream episode. But was it? Because then we see the imp monster hiding in the rafters. Good to see Boney got to be happy, albeit briefly, in this episode. Overall, great episode. Episode 4. The Horrible Thing. Burke and the guys are bored because the thing upstairs is away. They decide to play hide and seek, with Burke and Boney hiding from Drut. They hide in the dumbwaiter, but while they're hiding there, something oozes up out of the trapdoor. This is a nice new way for a monster to enter the cellar. As Burke realises that something has come up the trapdoor, the thing upstairs comes home and wants dinner. Burke sends up the ooze monster, but he accidentally left Boney on the dumbwaiter. Luckily, the thing upstairs doesn't eat bones, and Boney is sent back down, commenting on how repulsive the thing upstairs is. This is another example of the thing upstairs eating a monster raw, which shows just how lucky Rog was in episode 16 of season 1. Maybe Rog has too many bones. Anyway, great episode. Episode 5. Not very nice. Burke is cleaning one of the thing upstairs eyeballs. It's not clear how many he has, and it rolls away and down the trapdoor. We haven't seen any monsters come out yet, so Burke must have left the trapdoor open again, because Burke never learns. Burke has to go down the trapdoor to find the thing upstairs eyeballs. The area beneath the trapdoor seems to have changed since the last season, when it was mostly just dark corridors and dark rooms. The section that Burke first lands in is now full of orange water, and we see a green version of the orange honker monster from the last season. Also, are the eyeballs behind Burke here the same as the eyeball monster that got sucked up in episode 22 of season 1? Burke moves along a room with a ledge and finds a big eyeball, but this eyeball is attached to a rocky monster, and is not the eyeball Burke is looking for. Burke goes and hides in a cave with fleshy walls and a fleshy floor, and those look like teeth. It's a mouth, and the monster looks very similar to one that almost ate a certain starship. Luckily, Burke gets spat out, and we find out the thing upstairs could see him the whole time with his detached eyeball. This is another Down the Trapdoor episode, and therefore is automatically a great episode. Episode 6. Bugs. Many bugs are crawling up the trapdoor. Many bugs. Many bugs. Boney tries to warn Burke, but he ignores him until the room is literally swarming with worms and bugs and other creepy crawlies, including a bug pipe, which is a pun or play on words about bagpipe. Burke takes Boney and they hide on the roof to get away from all the bugs. To Boney's amusement, Burke falls through the roof and lands in the thing upstairs bed. Burke gets thrown out and goes back to the cellar, which is still full of bugs. He finds they like the sound of the bug pipe, so Burke plays the bug pipe and leads the bugs out of the castle into the swamp. There are many different bug designs here, and I really like the pun with bug pipes. Great episode. Episode 7. Yum yum. Burke is very proud of the dish he has made for the thing upstairs, but Drut trips him and he drops all the food. Annoyed, Burke throws Drut down the trapdoor to get rid of him for good. Burke, you bar steward. You don't deserve Drut. Boney is not happy, and Burke also regrets getting rid of Drut, so he tries to fish him back out of the trapdoor. Instead of Drut, they get a cute little red monster, and Burke decides to keep him, but he's not so cute after all. Luckily, Rog comes up and has rescued Drut, and he splats the new monster. Despite Burke's terrible actions in this episode, it's still a great episode. Episode 8. Birthday Surprise. Burke is looking for Drut, who is hiding. Probably because you threw him down the trapdoor in the last episode, Burke. Boney is unhappy. Burke forgot his birthday, so Burke makes Boney a cake, and Rog drops in. As they admire the cake, Drut comes in with his babies. He was hiding because he made a nest. The baby Druts eat the cake, and Boney is upset, but it's okay because Burke got him a wig. This is a weirdly disjointed episode, but he gets bonus points for having baby Druts. Overall, a great episode. Episode 9. The Stupid Thing. Burke is having a bath and singing the theme song. I suppose he must have heard it on the radio in episode 15 of season 1. The thing upstairs decides he wants a bath, so Burke has to go and wash him. While Burke's doing that, Drut is feeding his babies worms. The trapdoor is open. Not sure if Burke left it open or if Drut opened it to get more worms. Either way, they never learn. Drut pulls up a big monster instead of a worm. Burke comes back from bathing the thing upstairs to find the monster attacking Boney and Drut. Burke tries to bonk it, but ends up covered in scunge. They all need a bath now. That's where they leave it. I understand they did that so they could have the "we all need a bath now" line, but I would prefer it if they dealt with a monster. Therefore, this is an okay episode. Episode 10. Boo! Burke is throwing all his rubbish down the trapdoor again, because Burke never learns. Boney is worried about things coming up, but Burke says they'll never get through all that rubbish. Burke is then terrorised by some jump scare monsters. He calls them ghoulies, but they don't look like the ones from episode 8 in season 1. Burke hides in his cupboard, and we see the radio from episode 15 season 1, but it's not turned on at the moment. When he's chased back into the main room, rubbish erupts from down the trapdoor. Burke is going to start throwing it back down, but then the ghoulies tell him, "Don't throw your rubbish down the trapdoor." It's about time Burke got told off for that, and maybe this time he'll learn not to throw rubbish down the trapdoor. Great episode. Episode 11. The lump. The thing upstairs is complaining about a smell. Burke goes to investigate and finds that a big smelly lump monster has come out the trapdoor. No one knows what it is, not even Rog, but Rog says he likes the smell. The lump then starts squeaking and honking. I wonder if this is a parent of the honking monsters that we've seen earlier in the season, especially since these round creatures seem to be coming out of it. The gang never do find out what the monster is, and the episode just sort of stops, which is disappointing. An okay episode. Episode 12. The Splund. Burke has just fed the thing upstairs as usual when we hear a ripping sound. Has the thing upstairs finally burst from too much food? No, it's just his pyjamas that have torn. Burke goes to sew them up. While Burke is with the thing upstairs, the trapdoor opens and the Splund arrives. The Splund is a large, pink, round monster that talks in a scary, demonic voice. It asks, "Who lives here? And what do they taste like?" and then cackles madly. He's quite intimidating for a trapdoor monster. Burke comes back down with a large needle from sewing up the thing upstairs pyjamas and uses it to pop the Splund. "He was just a big old bag of hot air," says Burke. A good episode, a creepy monster, and a dad joke to finish. Great episode. Episode 13. Nasty Beastie. It's cold in the castle. Burke has to go and fix the thing upstairs heater. The trapdoor is open. I guess they just leave it open all the time now, because Burke never learns. Rog pops in and has a green fuzzy monster stuck on his head. It sticks to things all around the cellar and on Drut. Burke fixes the heater and there's a red and blue explosion that probably wouldn't be allowed on TV in a post-Polygon world. The others try to warn Burke about the green fuzzy monster, but they can't see where it's gone. The thing upstairs is now too hot. And as Burke leaves to adjust the heater, we see the monster is stuck on his back. The end. I feel like there was a better the end joke here somewhere, but I can't think of it. This is an okay episode. Episode 14. What a weirdo. The trapdoor has been left open again. Burke never learns. And something comes up and eats Boney. And it eats Strut's babies. And it eats the thing upstairs dinner. Burke is looking for the monster, ready to give it a good bonking. And then it eats Strut too. Rog pops in and Burke complains he can't find the monster. Just as the monster walks in, Burke gives it a few bonks, getting out Boney, Drut and the Drut babies. And the thing upstairs dinner comes up, plus a lot of extra which goes all over Burke. Classic trapdoor. A great monster with a good wrap up and some slight gross out humour. Great episode. Episode 15. The Big Red Thing. This is the final episode, and fittingly, the big red monster from the first episode of the trapdoor is back. He's picking on everyone, but then he thumps Rog, which makes Rog quite angry. The two monsters go outside to fight, and Burke and co watch from behind a rock. Rog dies. He goes down, and Burke can't wake him up. Only sadly explains that he is gone, and we will all miss him very much. The credits roll. Good night, kiddies. Why are you crying? But then, in a post-credit scene, Rog is now alive. He must have just been stunned. Kids, you can all stop crying now. This was another fake out to end the season, but much higher stakes than the end of season 1. It's quite good, as long as you weren't too scarred by it. Great episode, strong finish of the trapdoor. So that's my video on the trapdoor, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it. I think the show really holds up. It still entertained me, and I'm an old guy now, and I enjoyed it just as much as I did back when I was a kid. Let me know what your favourite episode of the trapdoor was. Put it in a comment below. Or if you know some bit of trivia that I've left out or didn't know, put that in the comments below as well. I'd love to hear it. I'm planning to follow this video up and do one on Stop It and Tidy Up. I don't remember Stop It and Tidy Up as well as I remember the trapdoor. I remember little bits of it, but I'm looking forward to rewatching that, seeing if I still like it. And if that goes well, I might even do one on Bump the Elephant, although I don't think that was aimed at me quite so much. So stand by for those videos, or if you're watching this in the future, they might already be up. You might be able to go and watch them right now. And therefore, there's only one thing to do. Now, I apologise for this, guys. I can't sing well. I will attempt instead to sing joyfully. Sing along if you know the words. Creepy, crawly, slimy things that stick onto your skin. Horrid things with tentacles that want to pull you in. Squirmy worms, slugs and snails that lie there in a goo. They'll wait down there forever till they get their hands on you. Stay away from that trapdoor, 'cause there's something down there.